Father, thank you for bringing us here this evening. Thank you for your protection and your love. We ask that you be with us now as we try to understand, Lord, what it is that you have for us, what you want us to do, and the things that maybe we shouldn't do. And Lord, we ask your help in how we live our lives and how we can honor you and praise you and adore you, dear Heavenly Father. We thank you for this opportunity, and we thank you for bringing us here safely.
Yes.
Be with those that could not be with us here this evening,
Yes.
and give them safety and health also, Lord.
Yes.
We pray in the name of your dear Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
What I thought, because he always has some texts that have action in it, and something that we can relate to nowadays. So what I looked at, I was going through the Sabbath school lesson for this week, and it's not something that we usually look at, Ezra and Nehemiah, but it's got some very fascinating themes, and I think very good ones for today. I was talking with Heather about them the other night, and she said that the one that we had last week was just what she needed. So let's turn to Nehemiah chapter 6 and verse 1 through 16. Yes, one or two verses, and we'll go ahead and, would you like to start, Lynn?
Sure. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Oh No.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
But they were scheming to harm me. Verse 3.
And I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you?
And Marcia, do you want to read verse 4?
Okay. But they sent me this message 4 times, and I answered them in the same manner. Should I?
Then sent Sabala his servant unto me in like manner the 5th time with an open letter in his hand.
Wherein was written, It is reported among the heathen. And Gashmu said it, that thou and the Jews think to rebel, for which cause thou buildest the wall. What thou mayest be their king, according to these words. That thou mayest be their king. 7.
7 and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king of Judah. Now this report will get back to the king. So come, let us confer together.
Then I sent unto him, saying, There are no such things done as thou sayest, but thou faintest them out of thine own heart.
For they all were trying to make us afraid, saying, Their hands will be weakened in their work, and it will not be done. Now therefore, O God, strengthen my hands.
Afterward I came to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Mehebetel, who was a secret informer, and he said, Let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night they will come to kill you.
And I said, Should such a man as I flee? And who is there such as I who would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in.
Then I perceived that God had not sent him at all, but he had pronounced this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him.
He'd been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this. And then they would give me a bad name to discredit me.
My God, think thou upon Tobiah and Sanballat, according to these their works, and not the prophetess Nadiah and the rest of the prophets that would have to put me in fear.
So the wall was finished on the 25th day of Elul, in 52 days.
And it came to pass that when all your enemies heard thereof, and all the heathens that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was worth of our God.
Amen.
Oh, so we see a lot of action in these 16 verses. A lot's going on here. And so let's go through I have it written out in 4 sections, and let's talk about what's going on here, but think about what might be going on perhaps right now in your life or in the life of somebody that you know. So let's go through verse 1 through 4 and read that. And then when we finish that, I don't know if we'll just have a discussion rather than writing out. Is that okay?
You
All
said
right.
the first 4 verses, we read them to ourselves again. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And then we'll discuss it after a few minutes.
So when you go through these first 4 verses, think about what's happening and think about what it might be to happen today. All right, does
It
anybody?
sounds like some man who's done a lot of work is being called away, and he's being criticized for the work that he has done. Okay.
I don't see criticism here yet, but I see an invitation. But I think you hit it right on the head. Where someone is doing a great work, they're doing a good thing, and so but they're getting this invitation. Oh, hey,
Yeah.
come over and join us.
And it's in a place that, a dangerous place. It's out in the plains, where no protection. Yeah.
Is this Nehemiah talking? Or-
Yes, Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Nehemiah is the one they're addressing.
But he must have sensed something not good about it, but to refuse to go. You know? He must have
Well,
seen
first of all, these are his enemies.
Yes.
Yes.
But does he know
And
that they're
so,
his enemies? Does he know that?
I think he probably does. He puts them off by saying, I'm busy here, I can't come down there. They're intending, it says, to do him harm.
And they sent him, they asked him 4 times to come.
Mm-hmm.
Very persistent. Oh, hey.
Yeah.
Hey, come on over here. So it kind of sounds a little benign,
Yeah,
but
I think they have ulterior motives.
Yeah.
ulterior motives on their part.
Yeah.
And what about on Jeremiah's part? I mean, Nehemiah's part.
Well, he says why should the work stop when I leave it and go down to you? In other words, I'm
I'm busy here doing God's thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't distract me right now.
All right.
And he's the one that's in charge of recreating the temple. Yes. It's a very important work, right?
I heard Doug Batchelor was having the Sabbath school lesson before I came, And he says, whenever you hear of a place called Oh No, he says, oh no, don't go there. So I like that. But think about that. Can you think of a time in your life when you feel like you're in ministry, or you're doing a service, or you're doing something that is a good work, but somebody tries to distract you?
A lot of times it's someone who doesn't know the Lord that distracts you.
Yeah, and their invitation may sound innocuous. It may sound innocent. The other thing too, now these people were known enemies. But we might have distractions from somebody that we don't know that has. And they may not realize they have any evil intent. But who is it behind the scene?
Satan behind the scenes, egging them on to distract us.
So I think about that anytime when we start a program, or when we are busy in the middle of doing something. We have to be very careful to consider different distractions, invitations, parties, whatever it might be, because we have to look at the whole situation. What's a good way to discern that?
Say it again.
What's a good way to discern what's going on behind the scenes?
Like what people's motives might be, not what they say, but they might have other motives.
One thing that I do, and in our Wednesday night prayer meeting, we're memorizing Bible texts, and I wish I knew it off the top of my head, but if we are starting out our morning in prayer and asking for God's direction, He does. He's behind us and He tells us, I will tell you, turn to the right or turn to the left. So I think that is something to always put whatever we have in prayer. So that I do it especially because I'm very easily distracted. I can really get off the beaten path. And so my prayer is, Lord, don't let me do busy work. Let me do your work. A lot of us can do a lot of things, but...
Came into my mind like, okay, a major distraction, if it happened right now, would be if the electricity cut out. And we're all sitting here in the dark. Would we all say, well, I guess that's the end of prayer meeting, let's go home?
No, we'd get out the flashlight.
We get out the flashlight. Or we quote from memory. If your cell phone might still work. So I just think things come from the outside sometimes. Like I know today for me, the fires are coming, the power outages are happening. My old road in Southern California is on fire. It's been distracting to me. It's been like I could spend a lot of time looking at Waterman Canyon burning. It's like that was kind of disturbing to me. But I could say, Lord, you've got that. I've got just a few things to take care of today. And I think the main one is just that I needed to be able to stay calm and centered so that there'd be enough left in me of the day to come tonight and not be snappy. I was getting a little snappy around the edges because I hadn't had my nap. What happens when you don't have a nap? You get snappy.
Naps are wonderful.
Well, if you don't mind a testimony, I had that brought to me yesterday. So I was offered a job for 3 weeks in December, and then in January, and then in February. And I'm like, well, yeah, we need the money. I mean, we could really use that money. But then I started thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and I said, well, now, if I'm gone, you know, even though I'd come back on weekends,
You'd be out of town.
yeah. And so, and we're just getting started with some different ministries. There's, you know, people that we're shepherding, you know, different programs. And I'm like, well, what would happen to that? You know, is this more important than that?
It
And
sounds
then-
like a distraction.
Yeah. Even though it might be a you know, seemingly good thing, you know, an answer to prayer, Lord, help our finances. Well, here's your help, you know. And then the other thing that I thought was, whenever we get money, we spend it. You know, if I got $5,000 or if I got $50,000, it'd be gone. You know? And then next month I'd need money. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, maybe this is a call for faith too. You know, because if we are doing the Lord's will, we have to make a sacrifice. And we're also called to live more on faith, trusting God to take care of us instead of us taking care of ourselves. And so I thought, well, yeah, you know, it's easy for us to say, oh, I got it, God, or, oh, you know, I can make these things happen, but is it really what He wants? And so it was a challenge for me. And I wasn't sure, and so I said, okay, Lord, I want to ask one thing. I want to call the pastor on this and ask his advice. And I knew that he was busy. I know he's on the way, you know, to Santa Rosa, and he had a lot of irons in the fire today. And I says, if he has time for me, 5 minutes for me, then that's the answer. He called right back. I said, okay. And then he said, let's pray about this. And then he gave me a suggestion of what to do. You know, call your boss here and see if he's got work for you. Well, I hadn't thought about that. So then I texted him, and he called and he said, well, yes, we do have some work, not too much, you know, a day here, a day there. But yes. And so I went, wow, 2 confirmations in that amount of time. And so then I said, yeah. So, you know, those are some things. And, you know, Nehemiah was very, very careful not to be enticed. All right, you ready for scene number 2? Okay, this is verse 5 through 9. Anyone have an observation?
I do.
Yes, Tom.
In today's culture, it's called fake news. Fake news. It was just a big lie and tried to intimidate Nehemiah. So it's just fake news. That's what it was, and that's what it is today. A lot of fake news putting out by some people that shouldn't be putting it out. So fake news.
Yeah.
And
The threat.
That's on a national scale, but it also happens in smaller circles. And it's a rumor. It's a rumor. I hear that, and it's what I call awfulizing. Awfulizing. This awful thing could happen, and then that awful thing could happen, and it's going to be really awful, you know. And then you get people like shaking in their boots. They're just terrified because something awful is about to happen, and it's going to get worse. And that's basically what he's saying. All this stuff is going to come
Trying
down.
to scare them.
Yeah, like that there's a revolt, there's a revolution happening.
And that's what I think
There's a
happens
fire
in the
happening.
news too, is they're trying to scare people.
Everybody gets all like, oh, there's terrorists knocking on our door. It's kind of like that, but.
What are they accusing Nehemiah of?
Overthrowing what the king, you know, to be a king himself in Judah, and he's not. He has a specific work to do, and he's coordinating the workers there to get the work done. But he doesn't have high expectations of becoming king.
character assassination, huh?
Why do you think he's rebuilding the wall? For protection?
Yes.
And one reason he didn't want to leave is because he hadn't put the gates up yet.
Right.
And people, if they could come in, the enemy could come right in.
Just tear it all down.
All the work that he did.
So you had awfulizing. I have another word, evil surmising. So, and that's what I have to be careful not to do. And that's thinking evil of what someone's doing. Or putting different motives on somebody. Now, how can I look at Tom and say, oh, Tom's trying to take over this and push Dennis out of the way or push somebody out of the way? But I think that's a challenge for us sometimes. We see a situation from a different angle, and the Lord tells us don't do evil surmising because you're not walking in their shoes. You don't know the intents of their heart.
Only God knows the heart.
And if that's the don't do evil surmising. The other side of it is always give that other person or the other people the benefit of the
Well,
doubt.
don't judge.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. Say they're
Yeah.
It's the adage, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, that's right.
I agree with you, Jeannie. We're not to be judgmental of other people.
Yeah.
There is a difference, though, between making a judgment and being judgmental.
True.
And the New Testament is, there's a very pointed example where some of the new churches were, people were doing some really evil things, some things that were immoral. And it was up to the elders of that church and Paul to call them out and say, no, you need to stop doing what you're doing, and if you don't, you're going to be out of the fellowship. So we have to be not judgmental, but we do need to make judgments within the fellowship. If somebody's out of bounds, they need to be called out and say, no, you're out of bounds, you're out, or you're whatever the consequence of their behavior. So.
That's what we see on the outside. You can judge actions, and you can judge, when there's a result to that action, but you can't judge the motive behind the action.
Right.
Correct.
That's only God's.
Well, and here Nehemiah was doing good work. But they were saying your intent is not right. Yeah. Well, and I loved his last proclamation in verse 9. Now therefore, God, strengthen my hand. The next verses are 10 through 14. And I think Pastor Caleb sometimes gives a little background to these. One background is that this person is a fellow Jew. He's not an enemy. So he's a fellow Jew that's been working with him.
Yeah, Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him.
But
So
he didn't know that at first.
No, he didn't know that.
Yeah.
But it's another distraction. It's another deceit. Yeah, it's deceit. Nehemiah knew that you were not supposed. Only the priest should go into the temple, and anybody else, even to save his own life, he wouldn't go in.
But it seemed like they wanted him to go in there because it was a trap. They were going to find him there. That's why they wanted him to go there. I don't know.
What kind of message was he given? What kind of message was this man giving to the verb. What was he wanting Nehemiah to feel?
Threatened. Threatened.
Afraid.
Threatened, yes. Afraid. They're coming out to kill you tonight.
He's intimidating him. Again, he's making stuff up and doing it to strike fear into Nehemiah's heart. And like Nehemiah said, it's going to make him commit a sin by going into the temple where he's not authorized to go.
The temple seems like a safe place, doesn't it?
It's humiliating.
Yes,
He equates it.
things.
Yeah, he equates it. It's like he would either run away or he would run into a safe place. You know, we say the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to them and are safe. That's different, you know. But apparently, what he's asking him to do is like to go into the holy place where he doesn't have any business. He's a wall builder, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A mason.
I think in the present tense, we don't know what's behind what was motivating them. If Satan had a place in their minds, which I think we could readily say that was a lot, Satan was setting up this whole thing. But I think in modern, our lifetime, we have to be very careful that Satan can set up traps for us, just like they were trying to do with Nehemiah. And that Satan and his evil angels know the things that tempt me, us, each one of us. We're all different, but Satan can set up a trap to get us.
He knows our weaknesses
Yeah.
very well. Yeah.
We have to be very careful about not to put our foot in the trap, because we could lose our foot, or a lot worse. So.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just, you know, it's like he refers to these prophets who had been trying to intimidate him. So it's part of the discernment of the spirit behind someone who's making a prediction or a prophecy, that there's false prophets. There's things that look and talk and sound like godly stuff, and the spirit behind it may be anything but like, oh, we're just trying to help you out, Nehemiah. We don't want you to lose your life. You know, we're your friends. We want you to save your life. Go hide in there. And so, I mean, like, oh yeah, well they're look, they got my back. You know, that's whoa. We have to just really pray for the gift of discernment again, as the saying.
And to take that analogy even further, we know we're very close to the end times, based on what's going on in our politics and the wars and climate, all of that. But it says at the end that he is going to impersonate Jesus, and that even the elect can be deceived. So we really need to know what it says about Jesus' second coming, and when will it be, and I mean not when will it be, but how we will know. So we are not deceived, just we have to be very, very wise.
Well, and read the word.
And honestly, looking at verse 14, that's Nehemiah's prayer to the Lord. He's basically saying, those guys, Lord, you're in charge of those guys. I don't need to prove that they're wrong and put them in jail. You know, Lord, you're in charge of those guys. Because Nehemiah is not, it doesn't record anything that he just says, God, just remember what went on down here, okay? I trust you, God, to take care of the evil stuff that's tripping us up and taking us away.
It's reminiscent of stand and see the triumph of your Lord. I mean, just be still and know that I am God. So waiting in faith on what God can do, trusting Him to fight your battle for you.
Nehemiah was given an assignment, and he knew it was from the Lord, and he had a goal. And isn't that what we're being given? Isn't what Nehemiah is showing us? There are diversions, and there are things that will divert us, but we have a goal in mind, and we have purpose, and we have to remember what that purpose is.
But it's hard when a friend, when a church member, somebody that you trust or somebody that's with you, comes at you, and maybe with great excitement or great fear or great concern.
Yeah. Well, it's like the church. It's a hospital for sinners. So if someone comes to you with something that's going to divert you, what do? Do you act like steel or do you act like velvet? Do you show compassion? Do you talk to that person? In other words, communication is essential to find out what's really going on.
And also being very careful what they're asking us to do. The Sabbath school lesson went through the challenge of seeing just what is holy. And are we having proper care for things that are holy? So what are some things that are holy? Like the Bible? What other things are holy?
Sabbath,
The Sabbath is holy.
marriage,
Marriage. Our prayer time is holy. The sanctuary. What else does? Oh, I put down tithe. Watch out for how we treat the tithe.
Family, church family.
Tithe. The offerings that God asks us to bring.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Mhm.
Tithing, okay.
I like that comment, marriage is holy. So anytime that somebody comes at us with like, oh, I heard your husband's having an affair with Haley, and I think you better go somewhere and check this out. And I've got this private eye that you can go to, and we can go and start following him with the camera, you know.
Yeah.
But the family group is holy.
Yeah.
The thing in it, yeah.
The family unit,
Yeah. So I think it's a call for us to look out for the things that we need to foster respect. We need to foster boundaries. We need to foster reverence for things that God has said is holy, and make sure that our actions there are good.
people are reading their recorder. This whole most current recorder is on reverence. It is very, very good reading about reverence. Yeah.
Reverence is a big word. To me, it just means living as though we are truly in the presence of the living God. That's that how we live then becomes our worship, because we realize, we say, God, come near us, and we know He hears and He comes near, so we are living in the presence of holy God. Let's all take our sandals off. Come on.
Holy ground.
Standing in hallowed ground.
Well, we have 5 minutes left. That's time for the last two verses. And that is verse 15 and 16.
I'm not a mason, but those were not little garden walls. Those were big fortified walls that went all the way around the whole city. 52 days without a caterpillar lifter
That's how
No
weird.
cement trucks, I mean,
Yeah,
come
that
on,
was done by
guys.
hand, yes, you're right.
It was all done by hand.
That's why they perceived that it was done by God.
Yes.
The very last sentence
Was like, they did it in 52 days.
That's not even
like
2
running
months.
2-minute miles.
That's
and they were disheartened by
pretty
that.
fast, yeah.
Because God was on Nehemiah's side.
Yeah.
Was
Oh,
with him.
We
They
had a lot of workers.
they perceived that this work had been done by God. So the enemies were thwarted because, they knew that, I'm sure Nehemiah must have thought God's reputation was upheld because the work was done in short order. And God
Because
did
who
it.
got the glory?
God.
Isn't that amazing? Now, who was being attacked? Nehemiah, all the workers, the whole nation. I mean, the whole group of people that were there that were working. They were all suffering the attack.
And I'm sure they heard all those rumors too.
Oh yeah.
It was like, you know, I mean, that's demoralizing.
This is such a call to stand up and be faithful. And whenever we do that, what does that do?
It glorifies God.
Well, that's pretty awesome. When we can stay true, when we can stand by what we believe, stand by what God says is our mission, then we can, even through lots of difficulties, lots of name calling, lots of threats, lots of fearfulness, we can in the end bring glory to God. And that's amazing. Yeah, I can just see everyone looking at the finished walls and saying, all power and glory is the Lord. And even the outside nations had to acknowledge that.
Yes.
And in the final days, we know that the New Jerusalem is going to come down, and all of the people that follow Jesus are going to be on the inside, and the walls around the holy city are going to keep the enemy out. So walls are very, very critical in biblical times, historically and in the future. So we know how it's going to end. So, walls.
The text that comes to my mind is, and it's a scripture song, is, I would have lost heart if I had not believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And we can get discouraged, we could lose heart. I would have lost heart if I hadn't believed.
And the other one that comes to me is wait. Wait, I say, on the Lord.
That's the rest of it.
That's the rest of it?
That's the rest of the
I
song.
don't know the song.
I would have lost heart if I had not believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait, I say, on the Lord. You were right there with me.
And that's what God has for us. Some people accuse us of believing in pie in the sky. God says, this is for the land of the living. If you're alive, I have this for you, and I have this for you now. Well, I would like to go around, and any praise or any encouragement or any struggle that you have with the factors that we brought out, bring those to the Lord.